what's really interesting is, like, I had a situation once where I signed a contract. I had an oversight on something. I thought a number was this, and it was actually something else. And we went through the whole
Mm.
process, and so we had this, like, discussion. And then I looked into it, and I'd made a mistake, right? And anyone who's read the book, How to Pitch Anything, it's by a book called by a guy named Oren Cass.
Oren Class?
So freaking
Yeah,
cool.
love him.
Basically, every discussion is a collision of frames, right? And the person with the higher frame usually wins. And sometimes, if you want an effective outcome, what I found is that you can do the whole "I'm correct, you're incorrect" frame. But in order to do that, the other person has to admit that they're wrong, which often enough, people are not usually okay with doing that, unless you reach a level of, like, enlightenment and, you get that being wrong is a good thing. But it's sometimes what I found is if you are just honest and say, "Look, I actually if I sign that without reading it, I will own that. That's my mistake. I'll take that on board. That was my thing that I did. That's my mistake." My thought was ABC after the fact. So by actually owning something, what you're then appealing to is their good nature, because what you're no longer saying is, "Hey, I'm right, you're wrong." Effectively, what you're saying is, "Look, actually, you're completely correct. That was a mistake I made. I take full 100% ownership over that." But on reflection, in all honesty, it's not something I realized that was going on, or like that wasn't quite as I thought it was. Every time I've actually done that honestly in any kind of negotiation, it almost always ends up in the best outcome possible. And you'll find yourself butting heads with somebody because they have to, in order to win, they have to concede. They have to be wrong and you have to be right. But sometimes just saying radical ownership, like, and I found this myself, even when I've negotiated against people, a lot of times, if they just said to me, "Honestly, Jack, you are correct. I actually made a mistake and I take full accountability for that. If you could meet in the middle, I'd really appreciate it, but I don't expect you to." You're like, that's a person you want to help because they bring ownership to it. Do you know what I'm saying, Nick? Like, I don't know if I'm making sense with it or not. I'm not articulating it, but
No, you are. You are. Think about it. Think how much cheaper it is in like a $10 million, $100 million negotiation to literally just say those words versus take some big loss.
Yeah.
If you, by saying those words, can get even like a 1% nudge, more favorable conditions in your direction, like, you should probably do it. And that is just game theory talk. And that's not even any sort of like human desire for reciprocity. It's literally just like, hey, I really screwed up. Let me just level with you here. Anything we can do about it? Like, can we meet in X, Y, and Z? And it's like, oh yeah, I just made $1 million by doing that.
100%.
What's the thing that's hurt by that?
Yeah.
My ego? Like, no, I just made $1 million, man. And I did it being true to
It's
myself.
so true.
So I employ the same approach. My girlfriend and I right now are looking for rentals. We're moving to a place called Kelowna. And yeah. Basically, there's a very small rental market down there. Most people that live in Kelowna, at least like the sorts of homes that we want, they'll buy, right? Nice big houses with lakeside vista views, whatever the hell. And we're looking at like a couple of apartment buildings. There's very little availability. And because of just the way that it's like kind of a vacation place to go to in the summer by the lake, like most of them are only doing short-term rentals for like a 2 or 3 month period by like, June, July, that sort of thing. And so they don't want to like allow us to basically move in at the date that we want. So, like I was going back and forth with a bunch of these people and I was just like, hey, like, can we do whatever? And then they're like, oh, well, like we actually do short-term rentals. It's going to cost 10 grand a month for X, Y, and Z. I'm like, no, I'm going to pay 10 grand a month. That's insanity. Are you kidding me? I could, but like, I don't want to do that. And then I realized like, wait a second, why don't I just be honest with these people? And then, using my girlfriend's account because she's a pretty girl and I'm not, hey, can I just level with you here? And just like immediately everybody's like, you know what? I like that. Like we might be able to make something happen. And it's like,
it's
nice.
It's so
Nice.
true. It's the honesty frame. Not that we would use manipulative, but it's like it is true. Genuinely being honest works.
Yeah. Like I want to move in on X date. I understand that like you're not open or amenable to that. Here are all my cards. You can see them. Here's my poker hand. Just like here.
Yeah,
look
I
at
guess
it.
it's like
I want to make this work.
I guess it's also like the transparency play there. There's a trust play as well. That you've kind of laid bare your position and just been honest, and you've presented vulnerability when you didn't need to.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think a landlord style situation, they probably really like that as well because they're like, okay, like the person that I'm going to have moving in here is probably trustworthy. They're not kind of slimy. They're literally just like giving me all their cards. There's a way to do that gracefully. One of my favorite stories is called Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, and it was written basically as like a fanfic of the whole Harry Potter series, dude. It's wild.
Oh, really?
It's
Damn,
like
okay.
10,000 words. It's like insanely long. And it's written by this guy, Elijah Yudkowsky, who's actually like one of the foremost guys behind the Stop the Development of AI movement, which is interesting. But I was reading this stuff way before, I mean, he's been talking about it for 20 years, but I'm reading this stuff way before like a lot of this stuff came to light. And then in it, there's this like very informative, instructive scene. So Harry Potter in this book is like a genius, basically, and he's really intelligent. He's not like the dumb Harry Potter you see dawdling around on the movies. He's like very smart, and he applies rationality to everything. Because he's like very intelligent, he can always find some sort of rational way to win. And then he's in some lesson with this like professor who's kind of way smarter than him. And the professor makes the point that like, Harry, like sometimes in order to win, you must lose. And Harry's like, well, that doesn't make any rational sense. Actually, blah, blah, blah. And he starts debating with him. And then the professor, who's just like 3 heads taller than Harry, and he's a big man, just beats the shit out of Harry. Then Harry can't do anything. He can't do anything, you know? And he's just like, okay, like, do you want me to stop? Then you have to yield. You have to like accept that I'm bigger and stronger than you. And Harry's like, no, you know, you're just unfairly doing whatever. And he's like trying to win every single engagement and argument, like he's been doing the entire story. And it's wild because up until this point in time, you've really been like, Harry's the best. You know, he's rational and he's like applying logic, and that's how you're going to win. But the professor makes the point that like your biggest issue is you can't lose. You need to learn how to lose. If you can't lose and concede, then you'll never be able to win. You'll win in like micro situations, but not like the macro ones. So just talking about negotiating more generally, like how to get what you want, like you really do have to be able to lose. And at the end of the day, what is lost aside from just like a little speck on your ego? It doesn't actually matter. If you don't have a big attachment to your ego to begin with, why do you care?
I couldn't agree more with that. And actually, it's also what is the game you're playing? Because you can have 2 people in negotiation playing 2 completely different games. You're trying to nickel and dime for $200. They're trying to think about the long-term relationship. So you could win, but win the wrong game. And at the expense of that, lose the bigger game that you didn't even know that you were playing in the first place.